Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, hi, my name is Jennifer, and today we're going to be taking a look at the Burberry Monogram Palette, also the Holiday Palette. I only picked up the 9-pan Holiday Palette, the eyeshadow palette. I did not pick up any of the lips, but everything else on my face today is Burberry. I do have on the Burberry foundation. It's a little too deep for me and a little too warm. Interestingly, it's something I don't wear very often. I actually like the foundation, but it's in 40 Light Cool. I tell you, it's really not that light and it's really not that cool. It's like a step too much, so I'm probably a 30, but it's also too warm. So I'm not sure if the 30 Light Cool would be worth it. And frankly, I have so much foundation that I haven't gone out and repurchased it. It's not a foundation that I love just so much that I'm like, oh yes, I must, get it in the right shade. But I do like the foundation. So if you're looking for something that I would say is, a good everyday light to medium finish, it has a scent, does have a little bit of scent to it. Good for dry skin, good for more mature skin, all those things. And you lean a little bit warmer in your undertones, you should check it out because I have a feeling some lines do that. They lean warmer. Even when it says cool, it's still more yellow. I recently tried House Labs, Lady Gaga's brand, and I tried them on in-store. They were all too warm. Even the shades that were really light that said cool, they were still too warm for me. So, some brands just do that. They're just a little too warm, and some brands run cool. So that's why I don't wear it very often. Also have on the Burberry Essentials Glow Palette, which looks like this. I have this as my bronzer. It's like a cream bronzer, contour, whatever you want to call it, which I really like. I don't talk about it very often because I don't think it's available, but it looks really deep, and I'm not going to say it's light because it's obviously not. You can see it on the back of my hand. However, if you take it and use it as a contour, and I used it as like an all-over contour / bronzer on my face, as you can see, works quite well. So I really do like that shade, and it's interesting because it's the only one in there that is cream. The highlighters and blush are not. Then I have the Signature Eye and Face Palette, which looks like this, which is of course an eye palette, and then highlighter and blush. I have the highlighter on from this one. I just wanted to use different ones so you guys could see. And then I have on the lipstick in Burberry Kisses in Pearl. So I wanted to do an entire face of Burberry if I could, and I did. So that works well, including what I'm wearing. All Burberry. It's all Burberry day. I don't have any Burberry earrings. Sorry, guys. I just don't. Okay, and I wasn't going to come up with my scarf and my coat. I was like, yeah, that's probably taking it too far. So let's talk about the Monogram eyeshadow palette. I have done some pictures of this. I did a reels. All right, let's talk about a couple of details off the top. It is considered the Festive Monogram Collective Eye Palette. It is $115. I think I mentioned this in my Will I Buy It. It is quite a bit more than it was last year when I bought the Runway, or is it, yeah, Runway Eye Palette. We'll talk about the cover and everything in just a second, but I think that's the most important thing to note. I don't know why it went up 40 some odd dollars. I can't see any specific reason, so I don't know. I will say that I actually really enjoy the Burberry formulas, which is why I have those palettes and why I continue to buy Burberry, even though it went up 40 some odd dollars. I think the formulas are really good. They're not talked about very often. It's just not a brand or a line that we really go into, but the quality is definitely there. It's just, in my opinion, overpriced, but the quality is extremely, extremely good. So, that's the first thing to note. Second thing to note is the packaging. So last year's was the traditional Burberry, what they call the Burberry, check, the pattern. And so you have that on gold. The other, the Essentials Glow palette that came out also had that same packaging. Now, the eye and face had the Burberry Monogram, but it had it in gold. This one has the Burberry Monogram, but in silver. So that's the difference between the outside, can see the reflection. It's highly reflective. That's the difference with packaging. Now let's talk about the difference in just the Runway and Monogram in regards to formulas. The formulas are different. Now I don't know if that means like the mattes are different than the new mattes, because I don't know that. I will say that the shades are different. So you'll see in a little while, I'm gonna go through some comparisons to other palettes. I'm gonna swatch them for you, but I'm also gonna have a segment where I do last year's, the Runway, and this year's, one on each eye, so you can take a look and see the differences. The formulas in each one are literally different. So the older one has shimmers in it. The new one has satins. The new one has a mist in it. We're gonna figure out what that is. And then in the older one, there's a matte brown. It literally says matte, and then the shade name is brown. And there's the same name, matte brown, in the new one, and they're totally different shades. So I'm a little confused, but hey, you know, whatever. So according to the website, and this is the Burberry website, US Burberry website, it says, coated with an advanced powder technology, the pigments of the 3 formulas combine contrasting ultra-sensorial textures. Love people who write this. With maximum color payoff for the long-lasting hold. There is a lot of color payoff. They are very opaque and very pigmented. And I mentioned that when I do the eye look, when I do both of them. Long-lasting hold. They do last, like all day, at least on me. Formulated without parabens, D5 oil or mineral oil. 9 eyeshadow, can't speak. 9 eyeshadows to shade, enhance, smoke, illuminate, and add a final metallic touch. Okay, so the shades that are in this new one. Matte brown and matte deep brown. Champagne mist, a light satin shade to enhance the eyes. Midnight satin, a bronze satin, a golden brown satin. These are deep satin shades to smoke the eyes. Light camel, a shimmering shade to illuminate the inner corners of the eyes. Metallic gold, metallic copper, metallic rose, flashes of metallic color for a final luminous touch. That's what we've got. So I would say that, you know, maybe, so on the back of this packaging, it says champagne mist. And then when you read it, it says champagne mist is a light satin shade. So mist is not the formula. I think that's the name. They mislabeled the back of it. Because all the other ones say like copper and then metallic underneath. Or gold and then metallic underneath. The champagne just says champagne and then mist underneath. I think the name is champagne mist and it's just a satin. At least that's how I'm going to interpret it. So let me rephrase all of that. There are metallics, there are satins, and there are mattes in the new one. In the old one, there are shimmers, a lot of shimmers, 2 metallics, and 2 mattes. The rest are all shimmers. So you can see they're different formulas because in this one, you have satins, mattes, and metallics. There are no shimmers. So I'm assuming the shimmers are now satins? Maybe? Don't know. All right, so I'm gonna have up in a second, hopefully, I'll lean a little bit, the swatches for the new palette. And as you can see, they are, I think, relatively neutral to warm, except for the rose gold shade. It's just metallic rose shade. That one leans a little bit cooler, but the rest of them, at least on me, are pretty neutral to warm. There is, I would say, a little bit of coolness to the midnight satin shade. That one does have a little bit of coolness as well. But again, mixed with everything else, it goes neutral. The former year, the Runway definitely is not only warm, but it is orangey, reddish, burgundy warm. And the new one does not have that. The new one has more of a browny green kind of look. So here's a new one. And here's the old one. I think you can see what I'm talking about, how this has a little bit more neutrality, or if you want to say leans a little cooler This one is definitely warm. And if you look at the middle shade, which is really the shade in most palettes, the way this is done is that the middle shade, if you have more than like 4 shades, the middle shade is the shade that ties things together. If you have 3 shades, it's still the middle shade. So if you have an odd number of shades, you get the middle one draws things together. So in this one, it's that Champagne Mist, which is a very light champagne satin. And in this one, you have, and I know it's called something red, Vermilion Red, which is metallic. And in the eye look, you'll see when I put them on, I try to match up the shades a little bit, like similarity to similarity, and then I put them on the eyes. And you'll notice that I get a very similar look until I use the middle shade, that metallic red, that changes it completely. Okay, now, like I said, because we have a video going up in a little bit that's gonna show you eye to eye, I'm gonna do I always say this, I'm gonna do a simple look using just a couple of shades in here for the beginning one. So we're gonna take there's, like I said, 2 mattes. There's a brown matte and a deep brown matte. And the brown matte that we're gonna start with is actually pretty warm, as you can see. It has almost a, what's the shade I'm looking for? There's a shade name that I'm looking for right now that I can't. It's a terracotta. There we go. Knew I'd get it out eventually. Been a long day, guys. And I'm sorry that I don't have swatches for, I probably don't have swatches for you in daylight. I really have not been able to get out during the day. Work has been too crazy. And I didn't have this during the weekend, so I couldn't do it then. And even if I could have taken like 15 minutes and run outside and swatched it, it has been really cold and really rainy here in New England. Fall finally hit, and instead of going into fall, it just kind of went into winter, or, you know, early winter. Anyway, so I don't believe I'm gonna have in daylight. We'll see, depending on when this goes up. If this goes up later in the week and I decide it's worth it to wait, then you'll have some. So that is the matte brown shade, as you can see. Definitely warm leaning, right? It's this warm leaning. There's just no doubt about it. But the other shades can kind of go depending on how you use them. A little more neutral, but again, it is still warm. So we're going to use the green shade. It is golden brown, it is called. And it's not golden brown, it's green. But anyway, I understand why. I mean, I get it, but it's olive green. Took art lessons for a very long time. Somebody wants to fight me on this one, they can. But that's the screen. It has a brown undertone, absolutely. This is not like the Natasha Denona Retro Glam palette. It's not like the Sydney Grace Retro Bundle. I guess we can call it Mel's Bundle. I don't really know what to call it. It's got a very long name. But no, this is like the Velours Kaki and the ABH greens, those types of greens. It is beautiful, by the way. And I know you saw the swatches, and again, swatches will go up in a minute when I do the side-by-side for last year, but I want to show you this green. It's an olive reflective metallic green, and it is beautiful. I'm just going to leave that on my hand for when we do the Tom Ford and Chanel. So those are the 2 shades that I have on the eye right now. Again, this is going to be a very different look than what I do for the side-by-side. So don't worry, the other shades you're going to see. So now I'm going to take that rose metallic shade, and you're going to be like, well, why is rose in there? That's an odd, right? And I think it's to do exactly what I'm about to do, which is to cool down the look. That's what you want, which you can do with this palette. That was really not possible in the other palette, although you could argue that the burgundy shades, yes, burgundy has a cool leaning to it. It's such an overpowering shade that it just, you didn't end up getting a cool look, you just ended up getting a burgundy look. And that's the other thing I will say about these shades. Each one of these is so powerful on their own that you could absolutely use these by themselves. Pretty much every shade in here. Every shade in here could be a one and done. So I wouldn't suggest putting one shade on top of the other. You'll see it in the video that I do, unless you want that shade to be the predominant shade. What I did here, if you'll notice, is I tried to keep the three kind of separated. I'll blend in a minute. But the reason I did that is because if I took any one of these shades and just put it all over the other shade, it almost obliterates the other shade. Not completely, but it does overtake it. So what I would say to you is, because these are so powerful and so pigmented, make sure that when you're doing your look, if you want some separation, that you place them carefully and use like appropriate brushes. So don't use an extremely wide brush to put on all of the makeup if you want it to be separated. I think you can see the amazing look that you get, but it is definitely cooler leaning than what you'll see in the next look that I do. Just to mention, there is fallout with these. Even if you tap them off, there's fallout. I get less fallout if you're careful, but there's still fallout. There are a lot of liners that I could use with this because I have a lot of green liners at this point. But what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take the matte brown, the deep brown that's in here, and I'm just gonna use this on the outer corner at first. It is a deep brown, and again, I'll put up the swatches again, just of this palette, so you can see it while I'm doing this. It is a very deep brown. For folks asking whether this will work on different skin tones, I absolutely think it will, because there's a lot of depth here, and these are very pigmented, and I don't think that's going to be a problem. And then I'm going to take the Champagne Mist and just put it like in the middle of the lower lash line, just to lighten it up a little and give it a little bit of sparkle. All right, putting some mascara on, be right back. Okay, mascara is on, final look. So 3 shades, we've got the green, we've got the rose, and we've got, I'm sorry, 4 shades. We've got the matte brown, we've got the matte dark brown, we have the rose, and we have the green metallic. That's it. That's all this is. And it's a beautiful, stunning, I think, something I can wear every day, but also easily something that you can ramp up. I think you can take any one of these shades and add depth to this look and do it very quickly. I'm just gonna take the green because I know everybody's really interested in the green, and just re-emphasize this here. And again, see the fallout that I get on the side? I'll fix it, but it does have fallout. I'm gonna try to tap it off a little bit more here in between, but I will tell you, like, it does do that. But it's very pigmented and it gives a lot of depth. So maybe the two go in hand, I don't know. There we go. Punched up a little bit with a little bit more green, and you have a more dramatic look. Absolutely love this look. I've done it a couple times to practice, and I think it cools the palette down and makes it look drastically different from last year. And with that note, on to yesterday's me. Okay, so you can tell by what I'm wearing, we're in a different part of the video at the moment. As promised, this is going to be the new Burberry palette, the Monogram palette versus the Runway palette on the eyes. All right, so I'll do a matte to start each shade. So in the former palettes, we have a matte brown and a matte beige. I'll pick the beige. And then in the new one, there's a matte brown and a deep brown. Wonder if the browns are the same. You know what? I'll use the browns in both of them to see if they're the same. Because if they are, then we'll know that. And we'll use the brown matte in the new one. Nope, not the same. Same names, old mattes, shades. And I just double checked to make sure my eyes weren't, there's nothing on the brush. I'm just like blending it in. Nope, they're both called brown matte and totally different shades. The one from last year is much deeper, much darker. The one from this year is much more warm leaning, almost has a reddish, coppery kind of shade. Pulling it out, pulling it up on both sides. Okay, since there's no satins in last year's, but there are a lot of shimmers, I will take one of the shimmers, Camel Shimmer, for last year. Satins are pretty deep though. Let me use a metallic. I'll use the, what they're calling, what's that shade called? Copper metallic. Now let's take the burgundy in this former one. Let's take burgundy shimmer, because that was the thing about the one from last year. It definitely has more of a burgundy take to it. I mean, I thought it was really pretty, but it definitely has that redder, purpley, burgundy kind of leaning, and definitely has fallout, which I will clean up in a minute. All right, and then this one, we'll take the green, because I know that's what everybody wants to see. Totally different look. Let's find out what this mist does. Oh, it's like a topper. It's really pretty. There was nothing like that in last year, but I can use like the gold metallic. Let's line a little bit. And again, I will use the matte deep brown in here. I'm sorry, I will use the dark brown shimmer in here. I knew that, I was like, that's not right. And on this side, I will use Midnight Satin. Let's see what that does. Let me clean up the under eye and put on some mascara so you can see what it looks like. Okay, back with finished eye look. When I put the mascara on, you know, I looked in the mirror and I was like, oh, it actually does look similar. But I can tell you, and I think if you look at the look intensely, you can see they are very different. It's because I put the gold over it. So I want to show you when we put the primary shades in here over it again. There's a reddish shade that exists in the middle of this one that does not exist in the Burberry palette at all. And it's what kind of changes this palette. It's a beautiful shade, but it completely changes the palette to the one that we have this year. I think you can see as soon as I use that middle shade that's in last year's palette, how drastically it changes the look. It goes from, you know, oh, it looks kind of similar to, oh, it's a totally different palette. And that's this shade here. That is the vermilion red metallic, which is the center shade that's supposed to tie all these together. These other shades, you'll see it in the swatches, they have a much redder, more purple tone. If you look at this palette, the center shade that's in here is the mist. It's that gold. It's a much lighter, more golden, whereas the other one has, the last year's has more of that copper. So I'm going to take that mist and just put it all over, just like I did with that center shade in the other one. You can see the drastic difference when I do that. So you can get actually a similar look with these two palettes, interestingly enough, because each shade is so pigmented that if you put it over the other shades, you can make them look similar. In other words, if you use the gold metallic in the last year's and you use the mist in this one, the formula of the mist in this one, you're actually going to get a similar look because the formulas are so, like I said, pigmented and opaque. You put it on over the other shade and it does kind of take over. But if you mix them correctly and you put them separately, you're going to get a very different look. Okay, so we're back from yesterday's me. Hopefully that was helpful. And so today I want to show you the differences between the Tom Ford and the Blurry Green, because you guys asked for that in the palette that we're working with today, the Monogram palette. Now, obviously, the Monogram palette has 9 shades, and the Velours Kaki and the Blurry Green have 4 shades. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to match up the shades that I think are most like, you know, the shade of green. Now, obviously, the shade that's green in here, there's one, and we'll put it like this so we can match up where we think it might work. What I would tell you, as I said a minute ago, Burberry does not call it green. Don't ask me why. It says golden brown. So we'll take the 2 mattes. We have, I want to make sure I'm grabbing them right, the regular matte brown and the deep matte brown. And the lightest shade here that'll probably match or be close to the shade in the Tom Ford would be probably the gold metallic. Yeah, I would say the gold metallic. Well, that might be too pink. Put a bunch of the shades up and we'll see where it matches. That's the champagne that's in the middle. Okay, so those are some of the shades. Like I said, you've already seen swatches twice now. But now we're going to take the Tom Ford Velours Kaki. Now, there are basically 3 shades of green in here, and there's only one Burberry. So if I match it up to this one, I think that's probably the closest right there. That matches, I think, pretty close. Now let's take the tannish shade that's in here. I think it's gonna most look like this one. Yeah. So there isn't an exact match by any means, but you could argue that it's a similar color story, maybe a little bit like this one. These are the other three brown, shimmer shades, and then that's the matte. We'll take, if it looks anything like this one. I mean, not really. You can just see it doesn't match up. Now, if you take the other greens that are in the Tom Ford, there really isn't anything like that in the Burberry. Let me see if this one maybe. This is the Midnight. It is almost like a steel kind of shade. Yep. So as you can see, the Tom Ford Kaki, really, there's one shade that is very, very similar, this green, and I'll put it on my hand in the Tom Ford. Put that one in the middle. It is very similar. Not exact, but similar. But when you look at the color stories next to each other, I'd say there's, I guess, similarity, but the Tom Ford is just much more green. Just plain green. And then these sort of coppery, champagne-y shades that are in the Burberry. So now let's take a look at the Blurry green in Chanel. If you're not familiar with the Blurries were out, I'm trying to remember when the Blurries came out. It's before the pandemic. Everything is sort of blending at this point. I'll have to put it down below because I actually don't remember exactly when they came out. Seen the Blurry greens. There's a Blurry green, a Blurry blue, a Blurry mauve, and a Blurry gray. That's the Blurry green. And this was the Tom Ford Velours Kaki if you hadn't seen it. Let's see if this shade most like this one. Yep, okay. So this shade in the Chanel, they're all similar. It's deeper, as you can see, but it's similar. Other green shade in the Chanel is much more green, like almost Kelly green, evergreen, than exists in either palette. There's a sage looking green, which doesn't look like any of these things either. Probably more like Velours Kaki. Those three shades kind of line up. And the last shade that's in the Chanel Blurry is, it's not like any of these either. Maybe we can put it close to that one. Similar. So here's Chanel right here, and here's Chanel, the Blurry. And if you look at it, the Chanel and the Tom Ford have more in common than either one of them have in common with the new monogram. The new monogram is an interesting mix of one green, one shade that has, and I think it's interesting that they named it Midnight because that usually denotes blue or gray leaning. Doesn't have to, but that's, kind of what you're used to. It has a little bit of green. I feel like it's a little bit in there, but it's like a gray, cool gray with like mixture of different shades in it. It's a really interesting color. And it looks a little bit more like this shade in Chanel. But I would tell you, I think there are two shades in each, the green shades, that sort of are like the monogram. The Midnight and the green, I think, are similar to these two shades in Tom Ford and these two shades in Chanel. I think this shade in Chanel looks more like that. I think the other shade in Tom Ford doesn't really have I mean, I guess it's a little bit like the monogram, this shade, but it's lighter. So, I think they're similar color stories. I just think the monogram, just remember, the monogram has 9 shades. I think there's more options here. And then this rose color that we used on the eye today, that's like a totally different out of nowhere shade that looks nothing like these. And the only shade that I don't have up there right now, so I might as well put them all up here, is this one. It's a bronze satin, and it also has like a coolish undertone. So the top is all of the Burberry. So yeah, I really think it is a cool, warm, neutral palette depending on how you use it. I really like this one. I liked last year's, but it's a much more, it's a very warm, very like reddish burgundy palette, which was popular last year, by the way. That was like a color story that everybody was doing. This one I think is much more, in fairness, I mean, I think they were both, I think it's more unique because these shades here and this midnight shade is really interesting. It has a really great green in it, although they call it golden brown. And these shimmer shades, or I'm sorry, satin shades are like really stunning looking. I think they just jump off the eye. I think they look beautiful. And when I first saw the rose shade in here, I was kind of like, I don't see how that works. But it tones the warmer shades down so you can get a more neutral or more cool leaning look. So I think, you know, honestly, it actually makes the palette, in my mind, more interesting. To answer the question that everybody has, is it worth picking up? And I am not the kind of person, I am a lawyer by training, I am not the kind of person who usually says to any question, yes, no. Usually I say it depends, because it does. It depends on different things. But I can usually say whether I lean one way or another. I very rarely am just like, I'm totally in the middle. This one, I think it's definitely worth picking up. Let me tell you why. One, from my experience with Burberry, they come out with these limited edition palettes and they don't come out with them again. So this is just my experience. It could totally change this year. But in my experience, they come out with them and then they're gone. They don't re-release them. There's not another, you know, reintroduction later. They're just gone. So if you're looking for something that's limited edition, from my experience anyway, they are. Like you buy them and then you can't get them anymore. So that you know, if you're looking for something that actually does what they say in the limited edition, yeah, and you like limited edition, I think this is a better, you got a better shot of it being actual limited edition. Two, the formulas in here are really, really good. The fallout bugs me, I will admit. I don't like the fallout. But if you're smart, unlike me, you put your eye makeup on first, then your face makeup, or you use eye shields, which I could do, but I don't. So you won't have to worry about that problem. Three, I think any single one of these can be used as a one and done shade, which is impressive, because most of the time you cannot say that about a palette. But also you can use a lot of these as like a topper. Now it changes the color of the look, but you can do it. So can't usually say that about most formulas. They are very long lasting and they're very comfortable on the eye. I have very dry eyes, and sometimes certain formulas feel irritating on my eyes after a while. I don't even notice these are on, which is saying a lot. So for me, those are all positive things. $115 for 9 shades seems excessive. It especially seems excessive when last year, and I was trying to find it, I have to go back, and maybe by the time this goes up, I'll find my, you know, the price of last year's. I thought it was $70. If it was, or it could have been 90. So we'll go both ways, right? If it was 70, it's $45 more. If it was 90, it's $25 more. Now I know there's going to be the argument, supply chain and, you know, materials. I get it. I got it. In my job, everyday job, yes, it's a huge part of what we do. So I do understand. But that seems like an incredibly large leap without some type of explanation, which I find irritating. So I don't like that part. So my suggestion, this is why I say it depends. I'm glad I have it. I actually will use this a lot. I'm going on a work trip in December, and I'm actually going to bring this one with me because I actually love the way this looks. So I'm going to bring it with me. I think it's going to be great because I can do some cool shades. I can do some warm shades. I'm very much looking forward to playing with it more. However, you know, I review makeup here. So for me, it's part of what I do. And frankly, I've been spending $90 on Tom Ford 4-pan palettes, some of them, in my opinion, that were terrible and weren't worth picking up for any amount of money. So 115 doesn't seem as severe to me because of that. But I would also say, you know, I have seen very large palettes, 20 pan palettes for like $60 that are excellent and have, as in my opinion, as good of formula as this. So, and as pigmented and all those things. So it's hard for me to justify that price. That's the thing that holds me up. If this was $70, I would have said absolutely go out and buy it. It's going to sell out. You should get it. It's beautiful. At 115, I have a difficult time saying that. It's just a lot of money, especially in these days. So I'm hesitant to say that. If it was a different type of palette, I would just say, hey, wait, there's Black Fridays are right around the corner. And it'll go on sale and there'll be sales. I don't know if there will be sales on this. I can't really gauge that because last year the Runway palette sold out so fast, which this one hasn't. This one's still in stock. The Runway palette sold out so fast and then it was never seen again. Then I would hate to say, hey, wait for sale, and then it's sold out and you cannot get it and you're upset. So I wish I could just tell you yes or no. What I'm going to say for my final answer is if $115 does not seem like a lot of money to you, or it seems like a lot of money, but you've been waiting for this Burberry palette and you really love the Burberry formula and this is what you want, then absolutely, I recommend it when it comes to formula, color story, different from last year, long wearing, comfortable, all those things. If you're on the fence and you have a lot of makeup, I would just be like, wait, something else is going to come along. It will, I promise. There'll be more makeup. And although this is really beautiful and a great formula, there's other great formulas out there. That's my wrap. So thanks so much for joining me today, guys. I really do appreciate it. And I hope to see you in another video really soon. Bye.